are the champion, the one that holds the line and finishes the mission. Everything that you want is within your grasp. You wake up in the morning ready to dominate the day, and every step taken is with purpose and integrity. Because you were not put on this planet to live a mediocre existence. You are here to conquer and make the biggest impact possible, not only for yourself, but for your family and for your tribe. This world is a battlefield, and we will be victorious. This is the Norse Mentality.
What's up, guys? I hope that you are having a glorious day. Today I'm sitting down with Ethan Buck. Ethan is a nutrition and fitness training coach. I guess that's the way I would say it.
I suppose. I don't really know what my title is at this point.
Yeah, he owns a personal training business where he does online coaching and stuff like that. He helps people become the best version of themselves, but it hasn't always been that way. Ethan used to be in a touring band for half his life, pretty much, living that fun life of drugs, alcohol. You've been to over 40 countries during that time period, sleeping with women, all of that stuff. And then eventually you got to a point where you decided that you wanted something better for yourself. And we've actually never talked about this transition. And that's why I'm so excited about this episode, is because I lived a similar lifestyle back in my early 20s and my teenage years and stuff like that. And I think a lot of our listeners have. So I guess take me back to, when did you start living that lifestyle, the old one? And then we can go from there.
Yeah. So early age, I got into punk rock, kind of hardcore punk rock, really kind of the underground scene of it, not the, shopping mall punk rock that you see these days. At the age of 13. So I started getting into all that kind of stuff, like 13, 14. And my mom's British, so we kind of lived between the States and Scotland. And when I moved to Britain is when I started touring with bands. So I went on my first 32 show European tour at the age of 16 or 17.
16, wow.
Yeah. Something to be very appreciative of. I appreciate it a lot. Had a great time, but you develop some bad habits along those roads,
Yeah, I can imagine, especially as a 16-year-old, when you're really starting to, you're still going through puberty at that point. Your testosterone's through the roof. You want to do all of these fun things, and you just had the perfect opportunity to just dive in head first and really experience all these different things that most people never will. So you started seeing all these different countries, experiencing these different cultures, drugs, all that different stuff. And how long were you in touring bands?
Man, I quit my last band not too long ago, like 4 years ago.
Okay.
And then that was kind of so I'm 41, so I was 38 maybe then. 37. I think it was maybe 3 years ago actually.
Wow.
So, at that point, that last 5, 6, upwards of 8 years is where things started being this isn't really for me. I still like the music. I still like the bands. I still like writing and stuff like that. But it just became unsustainable to combine it with the way I live now and my personal goals and running a business and just being healthy in general, mentally, physically, spiritually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard with that music too, because I still listen to a lot of black metal and hardcore and stuff like that. But I don't know if I could ever play that music anymore. Someone asked me the other day, do you ever think about playing music again? And I thought about it. I was like, I would love to play shows because of the expression that comes with it. But I don't know how I would possibly write lyrics for it anymore. Because when I did play music, I was a completely different person. I was suicidal. It was just a really rough place to be in. But that's almost the beautiful part about that music, is it is that internal struggle with yourself and then expressing that to the world. Every night that you get on stage, that's what you're doing. And now my life's absolutely amazing and I love everything about it. So I don't know how I could write, black metal lyrics about loving myself.
That's the thing. I think about that a lot too. It's kind of how I got writer's block. I was like, I don't really see things this way anymore, right? And it's when you listen to those lyrics, you read them, it's all anti this, anti that. It's very nihilistic. It's very dark. It's very just negative. And yeah, I love what I do now. So, you could put out a message there that's very positive and productive. I don't know if that crowd would be very responsive to it. But at the same time, you could kind of be that guiding light in that darkness.
So we went through that with Norse, because Norse, when it first started, I was still kind of in that world, nihilistic and stuff. And then over the past 2 to 3 years, I've shifted my perspective on everything. And as a result, Norse has as well. Like there wasn't really any way around that because I create all the products, you know, like they come from my head where I'm at in life. So really like if I want to see my transitions throughout the years, I can look at music, then I can look at Norse. And with Norse, whenever we started pushing the like unwavering positivity and stuff, we got a lot of backlash from that. I still get messages from people saying how I'm a beta fuck and all these other things. And the most recent one was I'm as soft as Charmin. Yeah, toilet paper, whatever. But anyways, we did lose a lot of customers because of that. But to me, it's like, okay, I know that this is the best way forward. I know what it's like to be just an absolutely miserable, nihilistic person, but then also have someone that just loves life and wants to pursue it as much as possible. And that's the thing is whenever you are living in that nihilistic state, from my experience, I didn't really have ambition for anything. I hated myself and I hated everyone around me. And at that point, like I'm living at such a lower energy state. What was the transition for you? Like when did you realize that, okay, I know you said like you're still playing music and stuff, but I'm sure that this transition happened years ago, a long time ago. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, just thought process alone. I mean, there were several steps to it, of course, but I started thinking like this is just childish, right? I'm a grown man and I'm sitting here like you kind of make yourself a victim, right? Being nihilistic, hating everything, anti this, anti that. Look, you can still be anti things. There's a lot of shit to be pissed off about, but if you put your focus on that, you are essentially turning yourself into a victim.
Yeah.
So I started thinking that way, like, all right, well, what can I do to not think that way and be more productive? But the real big stepping stone was hitting rock bottom. And, you know, rock bottom is an excellent teacher, but it's a fucking cruel master.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, you probably want to minimize the amount of masters you have in life. So for me, oh man, I don't remember how old I was. I was maybe 24, 25. I lived in Prague in Czech Republic. And I was living in the kitchen of a house that cooked meth and eating dog food maybe once a week.
That's all you were eating was just dog food every once in a while.
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe like flour mixed with water and salt, like if we could get our hands on it, that kind of shit. And I just remember thinking like, yeah, this isn't sustainable. So my first step was stop the drugs, right? And I wasn't like a strung out, like, you know, just complete junkie, but I was surrounded by it a lot. And the reason I was surrounded by it was when you go on these tours with bands, I don't know if your listeners have ever done something like a 6-week tour where you play literally 45 shows a night. You're entertaining, right? And when you get to a new location, a new city, it's those people's night off, right? They look forward to seeing you. They want to party. And you got to do it, especially when you're in your 20s, you can get away with it. But, you know, after a week or two, alcohol doesn't work anymore. And you're like, wow, I've got to down a whole bottle of vodka to feel normal. Right. And that gets scary. And then after a week or two of that, you're like, wow, I have to take drugs to feel normal. Right. And then tour ends. You come home. You don't have a job. All of your neurotransmitters are just frazzled and fried. You have nothing left. And then you get depressed and you're like, well, I've been doing that for 6 weeks. So I guess I'll just continue because that's what makes me feel good.
Yeah. You're looking for something to kind of dull existence as well, especially when you start getting depressed. That's why people drink. That's why they do drugs, is because they want to dull existence. They no longer want to experience life right now. They want to numb themselves to it. So whenever you come home from tour, it was the same thing with me, man. Like whenever I got home from tour, I would always try to get my shit together with fitness. But it was such a battle because even when I was home, everyone still wanted to drink and all this other stuff. And that was a super hard thing to kind of break free from. And I had to start detaching myself from these people. In the hardcore scene, it wasn't as bad because you got a lot of straight edge kids and stuff like that. Like it wasn't, I guess, probably as extreme as the hardcore or as the punk scene. But that turning point for me as well, I guess from being like super nihilistic to someone that has a more positive mindset towards life itself and towards myself, was reaching rock bottom. And once I was able to crawl out of that, I saw the world in a completely different light. It's like you live in darkness for so long and then you're just like, I will do anything to just see the light again. And once you see the light, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. And you're like, okay, well, I never, ever want to fucking go back there again. So what do I need to do to avoid that? And I'm guessing that's when you started working out and stuff as well.
Almost at that point, I was like, all right, no more of those drugs. But then I just kind of leaned into drinking more. So that was a problem for probably 5 years or 6. I mean, I drank every day almost anyway, but just drink more. Like I said, I was telling you earlier, I lived in a neighborhood that was a bar on every corner and in between every corner. And I could go walk my dog on a Monday morning and bump into some friends and then come back on like a Wednesday with a black eye and one shoe, right? That's just the culture in the neighborhood I lived in, not to mention like the punks kind of took it to the next level type of thing, or like the people I associated with. And to be clear, I'm painting like a really dark, terrible picture. I saw the world and experienced things that 99.9999% of human population will never even fathom.
And
right?
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It built you into who you are today.
Right. And I met amazing people, wonderful people I'm still very close with today. So there's definitely a positive side to it. It's just the habits and stuff that were developed because that's a culture based around getting fucked up, right?
Yeah, you got nothing else going on.
Yeah. We were productive with like music and stuff, you know, like I put on all the shows in Prague for that kind of genre of punk rock. I set up tours for bands. I organized festivals. And I was really busy, but it was just a way to get everyone together to get
fucked up.
Yeah, yeah. But the drinking thing, I started having like severe panic attacks, and I didn't know what they were. And I was like 27, 28, and it was all heart attack symptoms. I mean, left arm numb, sweating, jaw tightness, chest pain, palpitations. And I woke up in one, and then I had like one on an airplane once, and I was like, okay, I need to get this checked out. So living in Czech Republic, one of my friends worked for a cardiologist, and he's like, well, we'll go get you checked out. Let's go check it out. And I was like, I don't have insurance because I was there like squatting, right? What should I bring the doctor? Like, how much do I owe him? He's like, just bring him a bottle of vodka. I was like, oh man, is this the cardiologist? I saw another doctor there once. I mean, this is like out of a movie. You know, like in movies, like you see Eastern Europe, like Hostel.
Yeah.
The hallways are just dingy and dark. That's what a lot of like medical facilities looked like back then. Not now, but when I moved there in '99. So it was, you know, not too long after communism. There's a doctor at the table or behind his desk, cigarette and an ashtray. He's like, oh, sounds like anxiety. How about alcohol? He's like, yeah, I've been drinking too much. He goes, no. And he pours 2 big glasses of this stuff called Slivovica, which is like a plum brandy. It's really big over there. And he's like, have a big one in the morning, have a big one at night, and you'll be fine. I was like, I think the alcohol's the problem though. And he's like, no, you should be fine. Just do that. So that was like my experience with like 2 doctors there. I brought a cardiologist a bottle of vodka, and then I talked to another doctor who told me to drink.
And that was the solution.
That was the solution.
That's mind-blowing.
And then that, you know, me with those habits, I had this note from a doctor. It was like, hey, the doctor told me to drink. So
I have to keep drinking.
I'm fine. But I kind of grew out of that pretty quickly. But after the no drugs thing and then drinking and living that lifestyle, I got up to 300 pounds. I was over 300 pounds at the age of 28, 29. And I was always kind of a chubby kid. And then I was like, look, I remember stepping on the scale and seeing that number, and I cried. I got emotional, I cried, but I instantly shut it down, and I didn't talk about it. I never told anyone that, right? You're probably the 3rd person I've ever told about that.
Yeah.
And now all your listeners know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, I let that build up for a while, and I got into Muay Thai. And I dabbled with Muay Thai here and there for kind of like self-defense purposes because there was a lot of bullshit going on in the streets there. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pull the trigger. I quit drinking completely. I quit everything. 2 years, and just dedicated my life to Muay Thai, like 6 days a week, 2 days training twice a day. I went to Thailand, and I dropped over 100 pounds. But I did it too quickly. I atrophied. I got skinny fat. I eventually just looked like a smaller version of my previously fat self, which happens a lot. You see these people do these extreme weight loss approaches, whether it be diet or exercise or both, and you lose the same amount of muscle as you lose fat, and you're a smaller version of your fat self.
Yeah.
Right? And it's technically a form of obesity. It's called sarcopenic obesity. To where you're equally as unhealthy as an obese person. It's the muscle to fat ratio, and dark circles under my eyes and all that kind of stuff. And that's when I just started like studying nutrition and resistance training and hired a personal trainer.
So finding that outlet, which was Muay Thai, is what saved your life.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just finding something, a more positive outlet. That's what happened to me too. I just started weightlifting and getting obsessed with it.
Mhm.
And then I no longer wanted to drink because I'm like, okay, well, I know that's going to interfere with my goals here in the gym. I'm really enjoying this. I'm feeling better. And if it wasn't for the gym, I probably wouldn't have, I don't know what my outlet would have been at the time, but I needed that outlet to start transforming myself into this new version that I had created in my head. You know, I think that's where it starts. You see yourself of who you want to be, and you go, okay, how do I become this person? Like, what steps do I need to take first? Because I know that person's there. I can see it. And if you can see it in your head, you can create it. That's the beautiful thing about being human, is that it starts in our head, and then we can bring it out into reality. But having that outlet for you, especially something like Muay Thai, where you can get very disciplined with it. It's not like in the gym where, you know, you go work out for 45 minutes and then you kind of can just go back to your normal life, which a lot of people do that and they fall back into drinking. They're still drinking, they're still eating all this stuff. But when you really was focused on Muay Thai, training multiple times a day, you went to Thailand for a bit, that was your entire life. Like, you probably didn't do anything else. That's cool. That's cool. And like, we purposely, because we went on a really long hike the other day, and I purposely did not ask you any personal questions because I'm like, okay, I have an idea of what I want to talk about on the podcast, and I don't want to know too much right now. So I didn't know that. I know you did Muay Thai, but I didn't know that was kind of like your outlet to get you out of drugs and alcohol and all that.
It was a stepping stone for sure.
Yeah. How did you, I guess, what transition was it from Muay Thai into lifting? From skinny fat into wanting to get juicy?
Yeah, just it was like, so back to what you're talking about, envisioning a future version of yourself, right? It's called auto-suggestion, right? People used to think that was magic, by the way. Like when people first started figuring out like sales, they could paint a picture in your head of like what a product could do for you or a service, right?
Yeah, it's NLP, neuro-logistics programming.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that if I lost the weight and, you know, did Muay Thai, that I would look and be like the ripped fighters that I knew, because I knew a lot of them, right? Or that I was watching at the time. And turned out it didn't really work that way. And I was like, what did I do wrong? Like, I got pretty good at Muay Thai. I'm healthy and fit, but I don't look and feel right. So yeah, so I just started studying the nutrition and resistance training, basic principles of you know, hypertrophy and strength training. And then I just hired my first coach, and he was like, hey man, I've seen you around, and I've seen you help some people. Like, you should think about maybe doing this as like a career. And I was like, oh, dude, like that would be awesome. Like, you mean like helping people that struggle with the things I used to struggle with?
So someone else put that in your head.
Yeah.
That's one of the first times I've ever heard that. It's usually people, they're working out and they go, okay, well, I like working out, so I'll make a job out of this. You were already working out. You were loving this, just doing it for yourself. And someone else said, hey, you should be a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
That means that they saw something in you that you didn't even necessarily see in yourself yet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And you know, probably the most beautiful part about that is that he just saw me around the gym helping people out and kind of planted that seed in my head. And he wasn't the one I hired, but I worked with him a few times. I hired a different one. But he is now my assistant coach.
Is he?
So he's done, I mean, close to like 30,000 personal training sessions for an hour each since like 2006 or something like that.
He's a pro.
He's a pro. He's a super smart guy. And yeah, now he's like working for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's like it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, he opened up this door for you.
Yeah, and I don't think that he really knows like I've told him a couple times. He's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." I was like, "No, dude, like
you changed my life. Like I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for you."
Just that one question he asked me.
Yeah, planting that seed into your head.
Right.
I've done that here, even with Norse employees.
Yeah.
I'm like, "You ever thought about doing this?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, that'd be sick." I'm like, well, just think about it.
Right.
And then about 6 months later, I'm like, remember that thing I told you about?
Right.
What do you think? And they're like, I can't stop thinking about it. I'm like, well, here's a job.
Yeah. Like you need those people. You need those people who are going to be more direct and give you those ideas and maybe even call you out a little bit.
Well, I think that's an important part about having such a close tribe of friends is having people that are going to tell you that want the best for you. And if they really want the best for you, they're going to be real with you and they're not going to sugarcoat things all the time. It's like, hey, you've been fucking up. You've been drinking a lot. You've been eating like shit. You need to get your shit together.
Mm-hmm.
It's having those people that want to tell you the truth because they care about you so much. And that's something that's hard to find nowadays. Why do you think that is?
Well, honestly, I was going to say it's because people are getting too sensitive. You know, there's a way of saying it that's not going to make them feel terrible. But, you know, a lot of people, they just feel like, I feel like a lot of people need kids' gloves to bring something up. Like, hey, man, do you feel like you could lose some weight? No, I'll just, hey, man, look, you're getting fat and I think you should do something about it, right? And I needed someone to tell me that when I was fat. But what I got instead was, you know, if I brought it up, it's like, I think I'm going to get, you know, fit or something. People are like, you're fine the way you are.
No, that is the worst thing you could ever tell someone.
One of our mutual friends, Jack, said infamously, men don't need stories of men that were told to just be, you know, be the way they are.
Yeah.
They need stories of like heroic men.
It's powerful.
Right? Yeah.
It's the truth though, especially for men. I mean, I can't speak for women, but I know that's always been the motivator for me. We're reading stories, say about Norse mythology. That's how this company existed, or that's how it became into existence, is being 7, 8 years old and just reading about all these like gods and stuff like that and all these heroes, even like in Greek mythology, you know, like I remember watching the Hercules movie whenever I was like back in the 90s. I'm like, fuck, like I want to be that dude. But that's where that comes from, is these stories of these men that have done amazing things with their life. And it's like, well, fuck, like that's inspiring. I want to do the same thing.
Right.
You don't ever get to that point if everyone around you is telling you, oh, you're perfect just the way you are now, because none of us are. We never will be. And I think that's the best possible thing as far as life goes, is there's always room for improvement. There's always something else that you can do to get better.
Yeah.
And someone saying you're perfect just the way you are now, that person doesn't care about you. They don't love you, because if they did, they would want the best for you. Or maybe they do love you and they just don't have the balls to tell you exactly what you need to hear.
Yeah.
They're
avoiding conflict.
Yeah. And that's something we, especially here in America, because I mean, you spend a lot of time in Europe and stuff, and so have I. And I get along better with Europeans than I do most Americans. And then that's because they're so blunt. Mm-hmm. They just say exactly what's on their mind. I feel like that's how I am as well. But here in the States, it's not like that. No. Everything's sugar-coated because they want to avoid confrontation, especially here in the South. I love the South. There's a lot of really great things about it. But we are so scared of confrontation in the South, as far as like verbal confrontation. Now, fighting and stuff like that, like, of course, like that happens, but everything's so polite that I think that's the word there.
Yeah.
Being polite has been so oversaturated over the years that now we just sugarcoat everything, and we're scared to actually tell people what's on our mind. And we're also scared about what people are going to think about us. And I wonder if that has something to do with social media.
Yeah, likely.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I lived in Portland forever, and that's a whole different thing. But people from there, even before all the craziness, are known for being pretty passive aggressive. It's a typical thing there.
Yeah.
To where they'll never tell you directly what they think, but they might tell it to someone else, right? Or behave a certain way, but never articulate it.
I mean, how does that ever work out? Because you're going to end up hearing about it, and then you're like, why the fuck didn't they just tell me?
Yeah.
Instead, they're talking behind my back, and at that point, like it just be real with people.
Yeah,
that's the thing there.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to whenever you came off drugs and alcohol, because we get a lot of questions from people. I get messages every day from people being like, I really want to quit drinking and I can't. What would you recommend for people that want to come off drugs and alcohol? What's the best approach for them?
Find a productive outlet, you know. Don't go my route to where you go to the extreme. Some people might need that, right? You might need to switch that addiction into something more productive. And I think I probably needed that at that point. If I just kind of like went a few times a week, I was like, all right, I'm going to try and find balance here. It probably wouldn't have worked for me at that time. Now, for someone who maybe is a busy parent and has a busy job and stuff like that, they probably want to do something like that more, right? Like I get those questions a lot too. Like I just down a 6-pack after work every night. I'm like, how about you, like, instead of doing that every night, you maybe just do that like 2 or 3 nights a week and then just go for walks or hit the gym instead, right?
So not jumping in head first necessarily, but just kind of cutting back here and there until it's just non-existent anymore?
It's going to be dependent on the person and their lifestyle and how they're set up to function.
Yeah.
I think a younger person who doesn't have kids isn't in a serious relationship or doesn't have like a high stress, like super busy job. They probably could just go like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go, balls deep into this like fitness pursuit or whatever it might be. But, someone who's had habits for a longer period of time, which, by the way, is really the only reason it's harder to like lose weight or get fit when you're older. It's not your metabolism. It's not anything else other than the fact that you've just had the same shitty habits for a long fucking time.
A really long fucking time that you were taught by your parents that were taught by their parents. And
right.
It's a generational thing at this point.
Yeah.
You don't know any different.
Yeah. So I would say on average, this doesn't apply to everybody, right? It's not like a blunt statement. But if you're a young person and you don't have a whole lot of things going on in life, like a career, kids, family, just flip that switch, go for it. And that's pretty simple advice, but I think that's what most people need to hear. But if you're busy and you've had long-term bad habits, and you've got a family to take care of, you might want to take some baby steps towards that to make it more sustainable and not fuck yourself up.
Well, you're also going to go through the withdrawal phase, which is absolutely terrible, mentally, physically. And if you have a family, you don't want your family to see that, especially if you have kids. Like the last thing you want your kids to see is you just in your weakest state imaginable, because you will be. Like when you're coming off withdrawals, you are weak. I remember, dude, like crawling into bed because I was coming off of something, crawling into bed and just crying for like an hour. Okay, I had no idea. I'm like, I have no control over this. Like dopamine was probably completely depleted. Body was shutting down. Just everything felt terrible. Mentally, I was beating myself up. Nothing positive was going in because I just wasn't a positive person at that point. But if you have a family or you have a spouse or something like that, like cutting cold turkey and them seeing that side of you when it could be avoided by kind of weaning yourself off of these things slowly, you can avoid that whole period.
Right.
But it also depends on the individual, I think. Like some people are just probably like me and you, we're going to fucking do this right now and we're going to get through it and then we're going to move on. That's not everybody. That's not most people. And it's not that one's better than the other, because it's not. It's just personality types. Yeah. I mean, that's why I have a business, is because I get an idea for something. I go, I got to fucking do this right now. And when people ask me like, how do you develop a business plan? I'm like, I have no fucking idea. I've never once sat down and figured out, okay, this is going to be the 12-month business plan and 5 year and 3 year and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I want this. What's the first thing that I need to do to make this happen? Okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. And then it's just step by step from there. And I guess it's kind of like having faith in yourself that like that your ideas are going to work and hoping that they do. But it's just kind of jumping in and doing that. But that's terrifying to most people. And like I said, it's not bad or good. It's just that's how everyone's different. But I guess, if you are trying to come off drugs and alcohol or even shitty food, it applies to that too, because that's a drug. Or caffeine. Caffeine's a drug. If you're trying to come off of something that's holding you back right now, do like a self-analysis of what kind of person you are, like what has worked in the past. Be real with yourself. Don't compare yourself to me or Ethan or whoever, but just be real with yourself and be like, hey, what's the best way for me to go about doing this in order to make this an actual lifestyle change and not necessarily just something that I'm going to do right now and then a month from now I'm going to be doing again, where I'm going to be going back and forth. Because like if you're going to cut this shit out, then you need to fucking cut it out and it stay that way. And just pulling the trigger on it immediately does not work for most people. So I'm glad you brought that up. Whenever you transition to that outlet, like what would you suggest for people to do to find that outlet? Because that's different for everyone as well. Like some people hate lifting weights. Some people love running. Some people want to do jujitsu, Muay Thai. I guess what was like the main thing there that made you go, I think Muay Thai is for me?
A lot of the guys I was surrounded with were into it. And like I said, it was kind of like, I guess you could call it like a slight kind of gang thing going on, like between us and other individuals that were really good at Muay Thai. So I was like, I got to get good at that. So for me, that was kind of unique.
So the people you were fighting were doing Muay Thai and you're like, well, fuck, they're beating my ass.
And they're like kneeing and elbowing me, kicking my legs.
Yeah,
like,
I just got hit with an elbow 6 times. What the fuck?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a weapon.
Right.
And then you found out it was Muay Thai and you're like, well, I got to learn this Muay Thai thing.
Right. Yeah. But if if you maybe had a thought, like back to auto suggestion, imagining where you'd be, right? Like in the future, maybe 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you're probably going to have an idea what's going to lead to that, a vague idea at the very least. So if that's running, if you just thought like, hey man, I just feel like getting out there and running through mountains, then maybe just start hiking.
I think that's a good point to bring up is once you have that visual in your head, your subconscious or whatever it is going to suggest to you what you need to do.
Yeah.
So just sit there and like observe what's going on inside, observe what you're thinking, and whatever comes to mind, okay, well, give that a shot. If it's running, if it's hitting the weights, if it's Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, hiking, rock climbing, whatever it is, like you're going to have ideas immediately. There's no way around it because that's what the brain does. The brain is a problem solver. So, okay, we have a problem here. The brain's gonna be like, well, what if we try this? Well, fucking go with that.
Right.
Just go with that.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what these people are doing. Don't worry about what me and Ethan did to change our shit. Like, listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to work best for you 99% of the time.
It's pretty simple. Like if you imagine yourself being jacked, it's probably pretty clear what you should be doing.
You need to go
that.
hit some weights.
Yeah. And then figure out your food. Right.
But if you see yourself as like this just shredded fighter, well, that means go hit up some martial arts.
Do
Do that.
Be prepared, by the way, to suck at everything you do at first.
You're going to be terrible at it.
Don't get discouraged. Everyone started somewhere.
That's what's crazy to think is like it's straight ego.
Mm-hmm.
But going in, because I did the same thing with Muay Thai and lifting weights and all that. I remember getting super discouraged. Luckily, when I did Muay Thai, like I'd already done a bunch of shit and failed at it and gotten better. So like that confidence was there. I was like, okay, well, this is just part of the process. I understand that. But when I first started lifting weights, I remember going into the gym and looking at everyone and judging myself really bad and stuff like that. But how egotistical is it to think that I've never done this before and I'm just going to walk up and be decent at it? Like, no, you're going to be terrible at it. But that's the beautiful part of it. Like, it's a journey. It's a process. You're going to start off really damn bad. And then the more training you do, the more seriously you take this, the more that you make it part of your lifestyle, you're going to get better at it. And you're going to see that progress. And that's where motivation comes from. It's by taking action and then seeing the results along the way. And you're like, okay, fuck, like, let's keep going. Let's see what else we can do. But it's 100% being okay with, I'm going to be really damn bad at this.
You got to be humble, right? All these things are skills. And skills require a shit ton of time and discipline to develop, right? It doesn't matter what skill it is. A skill is a skill, whether it be weightlifting, your food, training, jiu-jitsu.
Drawing a picture.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're building a foundation to work with. So start with the basic foundational things and master them before you even think about the complex things that you see that are sexy and cool on social media. Because how many times have you seen complete novices come into the gym and try and do what their favorite powerlifter or bodybuilder's doing for no fucking reason, right? Like you haven't even moved the boulders and now you're trying to, you're moving the pebbles.
Yeah.
Right.
Work your way up.
And how do you learn what those fundamental principles are? You either surround yourself with people that have acquired that knowledge, which is super powerful because you turn into them eventually.
Yeah.
Or you just hire a mentor or a coach, right? And that's an interesting thing in and of itself that people, they'll pay a plumber, they'll pay someone to change their oil, but when it comes to their own personal body and fitness, it's so personal, they feel defeated, right? And it comes back to being humble. You have to realize that you're not going to stumble upon the scientific and anecdotal methods to accomplish the things that you want, right? You're not just going to randomly pick it up and like, wow, I figured this out like this month and now things are great, right? It's a long drawn out process.
It's mind blowing to me that people aren't willing to invest in themselves, but they're willing to invest in everything else. They're willing to invest in other people. They're willing to invest in the stock market, whatever it is. But the one thing they need to invest in is themselves, and they won't do it.
Mm-mm.
They just refuse to do it. And I think you're right. It's 100% because they look at it as defeating almost. It's like, well, I have to get someone's help. Well, yeah, you need to get someone's fucking help because you have no idea what you're doing. Why would you? How would you know what to do when you walk into the gym if you've never been inside a gym before? It's asking for help, and it's being okay with asking for help. Men are the fucking worst about that shit, man. Like every man thinks that he can't ask for help until you get to a certain point where you're comfortable with who you are and that you have confidence. You're like, I'm going to ask for help because I understand that it's a shortcut. So I hired a bunch of business mentors the first 3 years of business because I knew nothing. And we were talking about this. when you find someone that's already been there, done that, and you ask them for help, you go from being here to all of a sudden you skyrocket over a couple weeks. Like a mentor or a coach can save you 10 to 20 years of work in almost no time at all. And all you had to do was ask for help. And a lot of people, especially in the weight room and when it comes to lifting or martial arts or whatever, this is their life. I love when people ask me advice about fitness because I love fitness and I love helping people. That's how you are as well. That's how everyone I know over at the Norse compound, when people come into this gym, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, well, first off, every single person in here wants to help you. If you ask them for help, they're going to get super excited and they're just going to start vomiting from the mouth all this information that they know because this is what they're passionate about. Like, you're not a burden to people. They want to help you because that makes them feel good because they're able to express like, this is everything that I know because I've taken the time to put in the reps, read the books, watch the videos, whatever it may be. It's an opportunity for them to like really shine in something that they're passionate about. So you're not a burden. You're not less of a person for asking help. Like, if anything, that's what makes you a better person, is being willing to ask for help and then listening to what people actually say. Now, don't ask anyone for fucking help if you're not going to actually apply it. I'm sure you have clients because you have a shit ton of them. I'm sure you have people that they pay you money and they don't follow your plan.
Yeah, definitely more so in the past. There's a couple here and there. At this point, I kind of have like a whole interview process to make sure we're a good fit, and kind of a personality type thing too that I kind of look out for. But you're right about the men because they're the worst. And I've always said I specialize. Like, our whole brand specializes in coaching men. We have female clients who are like absolute rock stars, and honestly, they crush it more than the dudes mostly. But I've always been saying, I'd make a lot more money if we specialized in coaching women. Simply for that purpose is I'll get guys on the phone that are interested in talking to me. So they're there. They know they need help, right? But when it comes to taking that step, they have the money for it. It's a fear thing, right? They feel defeated, that they're like, oh, I'm getting help. Like, this is bullshit. Like, there's that, but there's a fear of failure and there's a fear of change, right?
Change probably being the biggest one.
And the failure thing too, that would be a massive embarrassment because their friends, their family are like, hey, he hired a coach. He's gonna do it now, right? You're in. You're fucking in. You have skin in the game. You paid money. You have someone telling you what to do and guiding you through the process, helping you over the roadblocks that you've developed or you're currently dealing with. You're going to succeed.
Well, at that point, the only person holding you back is yourself.
Exactly.
You went through all the steps. You hired the coach. You told your friends and family. They're rooting for you now. Mm-hmm. The only way you failed now from this point forward is if you don't put in the work.
Right. Yeah.
And that's terrifying to people if they don't have enough confidence in themselves to actually put in the work. Mm-hmm. How would you say people should develop that confidence?
Small wins, stack small wins.
Yeah, stack victories.
And look, the wins when it comes to fitness, they're not always going to be, hey, the scale went down this week, or I hit a PR, or I'm looking lean. Those are great. Those are the main reasons people come in. But how about smaller things like the fact that this is the most consistent you've been ever in your life, and it's like 3 months, right? You've never been this dialed in before. So let's 10x that. 30 months. Where are you going to be from now if you stay at least somewhat as consistent as you have been in the last 3 months, right? That's another one. Hey, maybe your clothes are fitting better. Who cares about the fucking scale, right? Maybe you got a compliment from someone and it's the first time you've ever gotten a compliment about how you look, right? That's another win. Maybe you have more mental clarity. Maybe you wake up with a fucking boner for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Some people, maybe it's digestion. Maybe they're shitting more than twice a week.
Maybe it's walking a mile and you haven't walked a mile in 10 years.
There's so many small things that you should be taking mental notes of that build up and snowball along the way.
It's celebrating your victories.
Exactly.
So in the Norse planner that we have a journal side of it. And that's one of the things.
I love that planner.
At the end of the day, you write down your victories, and it's celebrating those victories and acknowledging your wins, because that's what keeps you moving forward. If you don't take the time to do that, which I'm terrible at it, when it comes to that planner, that's the one part that I catch myself like wanting to skip over. And I've really been trying to make it a habit lately. Like, dude, you made this fucking planner. You know the importance of this part. Just do it. But it's celebrating those victories and realizing that you are making progress, and then getting excited about what's next. okay, well, we've made it this far. Well, what else can we do? And it's just continuing to stack those smaller victories. But I think one of the things that holds people back the most when they get started with a fitness journey, or any journey for that matter, is they don't necessarily, they don't acknowledge those victories, but at the same time, they're holding themselves to a expectation that isn't realistic. And social media has made that terrible, because you see all these influencers, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. You see these people that are way further ahead of you, and then you start comparing yourself to them, not knowing what kind of drugs they're on, not knowing if they have the best coach in the world, not knowing if they're using a goddamn filter now. You have filters that give you a damn six-pack, apparently. I've never fucked with them, but that's a thing. You have no idea. You cannot base your progress off of anyone else. Like, you can only base it off who you were prior, but people get held up on this idea that I need to look like this person. Well, you're not that fucking person. So don't do that. Like, acknowledge that you're better than you are yesterday, and use that as that motivation, that fuel for the fire to keep moving forward. But I mean, it's definitely stacking victories. It's 100% stacking victories.
As long as you're doing better than you were not too long ago, you're fucking winning. And that's all it is, right? I couldn't tell you how many times I've had this exact conversation. Someone's beating themselves up. I can tell they're just emotionally, mentally drained because maybe the scale didn't go down for 2 weeks. And they're just like, I don't know, this catastrophe scenario, right? Fixed mindset, right? They've just gone from abundance to like, oh no, I'm failing. And then I'll point out, I keep notes on all my clients, right? I have graphs and everything. I track their metrics. And I'll just pull up this, screen share video. I'm like, so here's where you started. Awesome, pretty smooth slope in weight loss. You've lost 20 pounds in the last fucking, 12 weeks.
Doing this properly.
And you're up against this tiny little plateau, and you think that this is a catastrophe scenario. You've never lost 20 pounds and kept it off, by the way.
Yeah.
So what the fuck are you doing to yourself? But, we all do that. We were talking about scarcity mindset on our hike.
Yeah.
Right? And you get it in all aspects of life. In business, I can have, a killer like 3 weeks and then have just like a shitty week in business for whatever reason. And then I'll be like, oh no, like what's going to happen next? Like, how is this happening? It's just the way things go. It's never always going to be perfect.
Well, that's why celebrating your victories is such a powerful thing. Because when you're celebrating your victories, that's when you realize, okay, like, yeah, we're going through this little patch right now, but last week even, we're crushing it. Mm-hmm. So like, we know this is just cycles. It's seasons. Yeah. Everything is in seasons. Oh, that's what we were talking about on the hike as well. Like, there's winning season, there's losing season. Mm-hmm. Like right now, I'm in winning season. This time last year, I was definitely in losing season. I was just trying to keep my damn head above water. And once I realized that's just how everything in life works, including the gym, including business, relationships, whatever it is, there's winning season and there's losing season. And that's always going to happen. When you're in winning season, stack victories. When you're in losing season, just keep your damn head above the water and try not to drown. But it's acknowledging that and not beating yourself up. But that doesn't happen if you don't take the time to celebrate your victories and your wins and acknowledge that I'm putting in the fucking work. I'm getting better. And then when people tell you this stuff, and I'm terrible about this, when someone's like compliments me, I just like, I don't know how to respond to it. So I usually change the subject like back to them. I think it's like a defense mechanism type thing. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, like I saw you did this. That's awesome. I'm like, yeah, how are you? Yeah, what have you been up to?
Right.
Like, you good? I always try to like redirect the conversation back to them. But when someone tells you you're killing it lately, acknowledge that.
Right.
Acknowledge the fact that you're doing great and that someone else is recognizing it. Like, don't be like, oh, they're just saying that. Because those are two different perspectives, right? You can either say, oh, they're just saying that because they want to be nice, or you can be like, they see that I'm busting ass and this is awesome. Well, if you've been busting ass and someone tells you that they see it, go with that. Don't allow your mind to be fucking negative about it and just completely derail you from this whole thing that you're on.
Mm-hmm. And the more experience you have throughout these processes, when you're in winning season, expect something to drop off of sooner than later.
It absolutely always will.
And then your strength, you only become stronger in losing season when you know that, all right, here's the dull moment, right? I got to get through this, figure out what's going wrong. So you're tinkering mentally, physically, whatever it may be, or both. You know that there's going to be an upswing. And it goes back to eating fucking dog food in a meth house, right? That was the rock bottom. Okay, next step is dead. So I can only go upwards from here, right? That's an extreme case, right? But if it's weight loss, if it's business, if it's muscle gain, if it's performance, you're going to have those plateaus. You just need to figure out what caused it and how to fix it. And,
how to get over it.
And that's where you develop mental fortitude, and weak minds won't do that. And then when it comes to, like I said, the fitness side of things, there's different strategies in nutrition that you might need to implement. There's different strategies in training that you most likely need to implement.
You're definitely, I think you win more in losing season.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's just like you're going to grow more when you push yourself out of your comfort zone. If you live in your comfort zone, you're not growing. Well, when life is just really fucking hard and you're barely able to stack any victories, you're growing tremendously during that time period. When you're in winning season and everything is just going perfect, life is just great, it couldn't be any better. Yeah, like you're winning, but at the same time, I feel like it's at a smaller scale. You're just kind of like every day is just a little good. And then when everything drops and you've got to really figure some shit out and put in the work on yourself, you skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you only skyrocket when you really are in that lower level, right? When you're not necessarily stacking victories every day, life isn't going as planned. When you're okay, cool, well, we're going to get through this and we're going to put in the work, that's when you really skyrocket. So it's the same with being out of your comfort zone. You only grow when you are out of your comfort zone. It does not happen when everything is going perfectly in life. And then when you acknowledge that, you're okay, cool. Like that's that willpower. So I know that I'm going to get through this. I know that I'm going to be a stronger person when I get to the other side of it. So cool. Like good. I'm glad that all of this shit is happening to me right now, because when I get to the other side of it, I'm going to be an absolute fucking stud. And I can't wait for that to happen. And I can't wait to be able to help my friends because I got through this. So I'm going to be able to help my family, my friends, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Pay it forward. You got to ride that wave. When you're winning, just ride it. Just expect it's not going to last forever.
It's living in denial whenever people think that everything is just going to be great. Well, that's the issue with modern culture now, is we think that everything just needs to be perfect and that we can create this perfect life for everybody. And it's like, that's not how life works. Like life is a constant cycle of ups and downs. And once you realize that and you just accept that for what it is and realize that those downs are where you grow, life actually just gets so much damn easier. But it's those expectations, right? Those expectations are what ruin people.
Yeah, it's unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Right? Like, again, how many novice lifters have you heard like say they just want to do what Arnold did because that's their goal? Like, one, you don't have to share the same genetics. No. Right? Two, you're comparing yourself to someone who has like 20 years experience plus the drugs plus, the lifestyle, and you have, you work 6 12-hour shifts and you sleep 5 hours a night. Right.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's being real. And once again, not comparing yourself to someone else, comparing yourself to who you were the previous day.
I think what's realistic for most people these days is just to be stronger, healthier, and leaner and more active. And most importantly, happy.
I agree. Well, that's where happiness comes from. If you can cover those other bases, that's how you have a happy existence.
Here's something that I think a lot of people need to hear is when we start digging into the why, like why we want to do these things. What's your main goal? I just want to get leaner and, maybe build some muscle. Okay, why is that important to you? Because it looks good. Like, that's still fucking shallow. Why is that important to you? When you peel back those layers, there'll be things for like family, and that's important. I want to be a good mentor to my kids or role model and be around longer for them, see grandkids and stuff. That's all really important. But when you peel that back even further, it comes down to a sense of self-accomplishment, more confidence, and happiness, right? And that's where you need to work outwards, not inwards.
And you can get down to that answer just by asking why.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do I want that?
Right.
You just continue to ask yourself why, and then finally you get to the core of it. It's as simple as that. Pull out a piece of paper and just start fucking writing. Ask yourself why, and you'll get to the solution. And then that's where that fire comes from. Like, that is the underlying motivation to make the change that you want to in your life, to become a better person, is by asking yourself why as many times as possible until you really get to the core of it all.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And if you would have asked ourselves that in the, nihilistic, degenerate, misanthropic days, I would be like, shut the fuck up, pussy.
Yeah.
But it's a lack of intelligence, right? I'm sure there's someone that's going to listen to this that's like super into black metal and just like likes drinking and like lifting occasionally. Like, I don't need that shit, right? It's too soft. Reality is like we're kind of spiritual creatures as humans.
Yeah.
And that's that happiness and that sense of accomplishment. It's a boost that you don't just find. And, you know, it might be soft, but it's the core reasons we do these things. I love taking guys like that and trying to help them see those things that like, look, you're kind of unhappy right now. And the reason you want to accomplish these is because you don't feel fulfillment in life, right? And you're looking for an avenue towards fulfillment. You just don't know that yet, right? To you, it's like, I want to deadlift 500 pounds so I can impress my friends or whatever. But there's something behind that that's driving you towards it that's deeper that you're not willing to admit yet.
Yeah, it's taking that time to really figure out what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have that figured out, that's what will catapult you towards this new version of yourself that you want to become, this self-creation.
Right.
That's something that I am fascinated with, and I have been for a long time. The idea of self-creation, like creating yourself into exactly who you want to be, and then just doing that for so long, and then waking up one day and being like, I was that person 2 years ago. I didn't even realize it. And I'm like, I've surpassed it at this point. And then just continuing to build off that. That's awesome. Well, how can people find you on the internet? How can they find out more about your coaching? If they're looking for, you know, a fitness coach, they need to get their nutrition dialed in. What's the best way?
Yeah. Instagram and Twitter, at iron_will_PT, or you can just go to ironwillpt.net.
ironwillpt.net. I'm also going to put it in the show notes so people can just do that. Awesome, Ethan. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Norse Mentality. This podcast is a byproduct of Norse Fitness. We make clothing, fitness accessories, supplements, and other tools to help you reach your true potential. You can check it out at norsefitness.co. And if you found this episode beneficial, please share it with a friend. That way we can continue to make a bigger impact and change the world. Thank you for your support, and we'll talk to you soon.